Additionally, all 30 NBA teams will play the day before the election day for what they're calling a civic engagement night. This, guys, is a pretty big departure from what we've seen in the past. We went back and looked at 2018. Then you had 4 teams playing on election night. You go back to 2014, you had 8 games on election night, which means 16 teams were playing on election night.
And some good news for a change. The NBA will not be having any games on November the 8th, this election cycle on election day. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I'm glad we can finally report some good news. So let's go to their tweet. The NBA today announced that no games will be played on election day, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. The scheduling decision came out of the NBA's family focus on promoting nonpartisan civic engagement and encouraging fans to make a plan to vote during the midterms. The NBA participated in turning the sports arenas into voting centers in 2020, and they are building on that. Isn't that a beautiful thing? It is. Certainly what the NBA is doing is worth lauding, celebrating, uplifting. A lot of the moves that they are making is certainly connected to the civic engagement of the players. More importantly, I mean, these are player-driven changes, which reminds us that having a little fight to push issues is indeed a good thing. And I'm really proud that Northeast Ohio's own LeBron James played a very pivotal role in trying to push for more people to get out to vote, particularly speaking out against voter suppression and pushing for African American voters to be engaged.
The organization, called More Than a Vote, partly will be aimed at inspiring African Americans to register and vote in November. LeBron telling the New York Times he plans to use his high-profile platform on social media to combat voter suppression and would be vocal about drawing attention to any attempt to restrict the franchise of racial minorities.
And so this was happening again in the 2020 presidential election, which we know was very consequential. It was neo-fascism on full display, and people were stepping up. Certainly athletes and celebrities were stepping up, as I believe that they should step up more often to use their cachet to push against injustice and to push for justice. But in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, LeBron James was at the forefront of the More Than a Vote campaign. And as I was saying, that focus was on drawing attention to voter suppression, educating voters with a particular focus on black voters. So shout out to King James himself for using his incredible repertoire to push for civic engagement. And so as we see more celebrities and athletes get involved, they have the ability to be able to push people in other industries and also the people in the executive rooms of those industries to be more civically engaged. And adding to the good news about the NBA, on the night before Election Day, where there'll be games played, about 30 leagues will be playing, that night before Election Day will be dubbed Civic Engagement Night.
It's unusual. We don't usually change the schedule for an external event, but voting and Election Day are obviously unique and incredibly important to our democracy, and that's part of the value proposition that we want to make sure people understand, that voting is unlike anything else.
Which is good. So there will be information about voting, encouragement to vote coming from the announcers. This is really, really good. And hopefully more of our sports, not sports teams, but more of the sports industry will get engaged in the same way that the NBA is getting engaged to encourage people to vote. Yes, the business sector has a role to play in civic engagement. And it doesn't cost them a whole lot. You know, this is not partisan, it's nonpartisan. This is really about reminding people and encouraging them to participate in this representative democracy. And the more people to participate, the better. Now, I know everybody doesn't agree with that. That's why a whole bunch of voter suppression goes on, because there are some folks that don't believe that. Particularly, I'm looking at you, GOP, but not exclusively you, Because Democrats got some problems too, but particularly the GOP, as they try to suppress votes all over this country, continue to mess with the most marginalized populations, most marginalized people. But I digress. Let me just stay on the good news. Yes, Civic Engagement Night. How beautiful is that? Not telling people who to vote for, but just reminding them there's an election the next day. And please, please, please make sure that you get out to vote. Let's also take this as a reminder that we need to make Election Day a national holiday. How about that? If we did that, that would certainly give opportunities for more people to vote and not to have to worry about getting to work or childcare, all of the things that kind of burden your day. If we make Election Day a national holiday, that would certainly open up more opportunities for more people. That is a national fix that needs to happen. There are some countries where you get penalized if you don't vote. Hello, somebody? Oh yeah, they penalize you if you do not vote. In this country, we have to make voting more of a premium and to understand that voting is just one part of the process. You have to be engaged at all times. You got to lobby. Voting is really the end of the process. It is the things that we do ahead of time, like supporting candidates that are standing up for the issues that we care about, making sure that we volunteer, making sure that we are lobbying on the issues that matter the most to us. All of those things combined with voting certainly makes for a more robust democracy. And after all, isn't that what we should want? Look, most people are never ever going to run for office. So the greatest equalizer that we have, one of the greatest equalizers that we have, is the whole notion of one person, one vote. And we, all of us, must ensure that everybody, whether they agree with us politically or not, has unfettered access to the ballot box. And we must continue to pay attention to the disenfranchised and the marginalized communities historically who have not had that unfettered access to the ballot box. Things can be given, and certainly we know things can be taken away. I'm old enough to remember Shelby v. Holder, the assault on the Voting Rights Act itself, which the Congress has not corrected the misdeeds and the mayhem of the United States Supreme Court, even on that. So, voting, part of the process, not the end-all, be-all, but one of the greatest pillars of a representative democracy.